Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Culture Binge. It's the Wisecrack podcast, where we take a rocket ship with our brother into the deepest reaches of the cultural zeitgeist. I'm Michael Burns, joined as always by the man who once told me that there's no crying in podcasting, Al Copperman, and the person who once asked me to change my name via a brutal and multi-platform cyberbullying campaign, Serby.
Yes.
How are you guys today?
I'm great. My AC's off because it's too much background noise. So in 20 to 30 minutes, I will be very sweaty.
Wow. We will keep it quick. And for anyone who's not watching this on video, we are all wearing black today. I don't know why, but we've somehow color coordinated. So does this mean we're going to have a real grim vibe on the podcast today? Should people get ready for that?
Yeah. I mean, we started off talking about war crimes, so.
Good point. War crimes and dehydration, folks. Well, before we dive in too hard, I wanted to let everyone know we're restarting another Wisecrack podcast pretty soon. The Squanch, which is our Rick and Morty podcast. The season 5 of the show starts on June 20th. So we're going to start podcasting every Sunday night after the show is over. Those should come out on Mondays. And we have a preview episode for the new season coming up soon with me, Ryan Haley, and Tommy Cook. And we're also inviting a bunch of special guests on this season. So if you're a Rick and Morty person, or if you just need more podcasts in your life, look out for the Squanch, and you can go subscribe to that right now on any of the podcast platforms that you prefer. But now on to real business, slaps and chaps. And I will say, I saw on the Wisecrack Reddit that there was a question about what slaps and chaps meant. So let's just refresh everyone, because I realize it is like colloquial phrasing for us Americans in the colonies. Slaps. It's a word we use when we say something's good. Something slaps. Maybe it's a little like passe now, and that's not something said as much anymore, but we got to commit to it.
It was cool young person word 2 years ago, which means it's not cool old person word now.
Yeah, it's language now used by parents and cops,
and podcast hosts
and chaps, if I'm not mistaken, just like something that chaps your ass.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Great.
No one wants their ass chapped.
Cool. No one. Well, some people probably do, to be honest, because we don't shame desires on this podcast. If you like that, that's cool for you. We happen to use it in a way that signifies something we don't like, but that's just us. So let's get into slaps and chaps now that we know what they mean. Serby, slaps and chaps for you.
So what slaps, I think I mentioned this last time too. I'm venturing out more because I'm fully vaccinated. I'm still nervous around other people. I definitely have developed an anxiety disorder, but I'm feeling a bit more comfortable. I don't like cringe when other people walk by. It's not that I am afraid of getting sick. It's more that I am just not used to being around other humans. And so now I'm like, oh no, like you're too close. This is too overwhelming. But I'm feeling hopeful. So I'm trying to push myself to continue going out. What chaps, I finished Ragnarok on Netflix and it was really good. I'm sad that I'm all caught up with the seasons. So what chaps is I just don't have another show to watch.
What's Ragnarok?
So it's like a Norse mythology set in modern day.
So not the Thor movie. Okay.
No. Oh yeah, no. It's it's a Norwegian show. Centers around like a group of I think like 18-year-olds. So if the gods were to exist today, how would things be? There are 2 seasons, I think like 10 episodes each. It's really good. It's fun to watch. I need other shows. So if anyone has a show recommendation, please let me know.
Have you gotten into The Expanse yet?
No, that's the one on Prime, right?
Yeah. I watched the first couple seasons, but I'm on book 5. I don't know if that's my slap for today, but it's incredible.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out. Thank you.
What about you, Burns? You should cut ahead of me. I feel like you always go last.
Whoa.
I wanna.
Okay, I'll cut ahead. Slaps. Very exciting news. I'm gonna do TV for both, I think, to follow Serby's lead. So for slaps, I think You Should Leave is coming back on July 6th. It's the Tim Robinson sketch comedy show on Netflix, the funniest show that's been produced on any streaming platform maybe ever. So that's coming back. That's going to be awesome to celebrate America's birthday. And if you haven't watched season 1 of I Think You Should Leave, start now so you can watch it 5 times before the new one comes out. Chaps have a little bit of an RIP. It was announced that one of my favorite TV shows that I've talked about on this podcast, I think before, High Maintenance, is coming to an end. If you've not watched High Maintenance, it's a weird, sweet, absurd, ethnographic comedy about New York City and the people who live there via a character called the guy who rides his bike around and sells weed. I'm very sad that that's ending. And if you've never watched that, go watch that. And the other thing that Chaps a little bit, I'm going to be bad and say too, at Chaps that like the taxi and rideshare industries are falling apart right now. And it especially sucks that it's like the fault of the rideshare companies that ruined everything. There was a good Gravel Institute video about that came out last week. But yeah, I mean, I'm not taking ride shares or anything right now, but it just makes me sad to hear people that are like friends that are trying to go to the airport to see their families and are freaking out because it's like $300 to get them there via an application on their phone.
There is a new app if you're in New York City called, I think it's just like Co-op Rideshare. If you Google those, you'll find it, but it's owned by the cab drivers. It's like their version of Uber. I've heard it's much cheaper. They don't price gouge to my knowledge. And, you know, they're not skimming off the top to give some executive tons of money. But yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. How about you, Alec? What's slapping and chapping?
This is not my slap. Sorry. So last week I went on a half-failed hiking adventure. Was supposed to be gone for 4 days. Was gone for 2. But anyway, on my way back, what slaps is I was on the subway and there was these 2 like 11, 12-year-olds. And they're just like, oh, are you guys hiking? And we're like, yeah. And I was obviously expecting them to throw something in my face and be like, fucking loser. But instead they asked if I had a TikTok, which I don't. And then he talked about like, oh man, all these cool people are on TikTok doing their hiking adventures. And I thought, I was so cool because a tween wanted to know if I was on TikTok, which I'm not. But also I do think I complain about social media constantly, but I think it's cool that kids are watching kind of like influencers doing their fancy hikes and they want to like go in nature as a result.
It's very cool.
Chaps, the world is perfect, as you know. So
yes, as we all know, everything is good, nothing is bad. We're all going to live forever. Well, great. Before we jump into topics, and we have a really good slate of topics. I mean, I say that every week, but this time I believe it. Just a reminder, if you like this podcast, subscribe to it. However you subscribe to podcasts, use that method to subscribe to this one. Rate and review it. Give it a good rating, hopefully. And if you review it, do something fun. I don't know. The thing we always recommend is tell us who we would be in some set of categorizations. So if you want to tell us which characters would be on a TV show, like let's say it's Sex and the City, like who is everyone here? I think I know who everyone is. I know for sure that I think Alec would be Charlotte. I think, is that the Cynthia Nixon character?
I don't know if I should be offended.
Miranda.
I'm gonna assume
Miranda. Okay. I know Alex and Miranda. I know that for sure. I don't know anything else, but I know he's Miranda. But, you know, the rest we can fill it in. But do that. It means a lot to us. Subscribe, rate, review, make fan art, anything like that. We love it. But now let's get into it. And this is a topic I'm very excited to talk about because it involves 2 things. I guess not 2 things I love, but 2 things I think are really important to talk about: sports and mental health. So, Serby, tell us what's been going on this week with Naomi Osaka.
Yeah, so recently the number 2 seeded tennis player Naomi Osaka was in the news for her decision to not engage in mandatory media obligations during the French Open. She released an Instagram statement and she wrote, "I've often felt that people have no regard for athletes' mental health, and this rings very true whenever I see a press conference or partake in one. We're often sat there and asked questions that we've been asked multiple times before, or asked questions that bring doubt into our minds, and I'm not going to subject myself to people that doubt me. I watched many clips of athletes breaking down after a loss in the press room, and I know you have as well. I believe that whole situation is kicking a person when they're down, and I don't understand the reason behind it. I hope the considerable amount that I get fined for this will go towards a mental health charity." There's a lot more in there, but that's the gist. So she gave advance notice that she wasn't going to speak at these press conferences. And after she missed the first one, she was issued a $15,000 fine and was threatened by the tournament organizers with not just with the French Open, but I believe with all of the 4 major tournaments. They threatened her with harsher sanctions, such as suspension or disqualification. So in the day that followed, the media was discussing her decision not to speak at press conferences, and a lot of the conversation centered around mental health. Meanwhile, the French Open Twitter posted a photo of other tennis players talking at these press conferences with the accompanying text, "They understood the assignment." They later deleted the tweet.
Yikes.
Then Naomi released a second statement on Instagram saying that she was withdrawing from the French Open and that she planned to take some time away from the court, and that her withdrawal was the best thing for the tournament, other players, and for her overall well-being. And she also shared that she has a history dealing with depression and social anxiety, and talking to the press has always been an anxiety-provoking and stress-inducing activity for her. So what makes this situation unique is not that she said she wasn't going to speak to the press, but that she wasn't going to speak to the press due to mental health concerns. And as far as I know, no other tennis player has said that they were doing this because of their history with depression or anxiety or whatever. And so in the weeks that have followed, multiple athletes have supported Naomi, expressing that they've also felt upset during these mandatory press obligations. Others have said that, while they don't have issues with it, they're empathetic to her situation. And a few others said that speaking with the media is just part of the job, and it's just part of the pressure of being a professional athlete, and you have to do it. So before I share what my thoughts are on the situation, I'd like to hear from the two of you. Do you think that dealing with the press is just a mandatory aspect of her career as a professional athlete, and that she needed to just push herself to do it? Or do you think that she has valid concerns that these press conferences are detrimental to athletes' well-being, and that she was right to protect her own mental health?
I mean, I think a simple thing here would just be to say that, like, if Naomi Osaka had a bad flu that day, would people have accepted the idea that she couldn't do the press conference because she was physically ill? And part of me thinks yes, that wouldn't have been a big deal. So I think if we take mental illness as serious and its symptoms as seriously as we take physical illness, then it shouldn't be a problem. I think this sucks. I do think in a sense press is a part of the job, and I'm not saying that's good. But I did hear one sports podcast take that was like, sadly, like, sports are popular not just because of the playing of the sport itself, but because of the media coverage around these sports. And sadly, like, that's what drives a lot of the content and the coverage that allows these, leagues to make a lot of money and continue to grow. So I do think, for better or worse, it's a part of it. And I think that sucks, because I think that when you're at tennis camp as a kid, you're not doing media training, and maybe you are an introvert. Maybe you're someone who doesn't like those settings. I think the same thing for people that are like working in the arts. Like, you could be a great musician or actor and have no desire to do those interviews. And I don't really know a good way around that. But I would just say, like, if we just simply took mental health as seriously as we took any other type of physical health, this seems like it wouldn't be an issue. And I think 100% it is a powerful and a bold statement she's making to say that, like, this stuff matters. Anxiety issues are real, and she shouldn't have to stand in front of a bunch of, like, strangers who yell questions at her if she's feeling very bad. I don't like taking the bus if I'm feeling anxious. I can't imagine what it's like to do what she would have to do in that situation.
Yeah, I think I agree with you as a non-sports fan. I also want to call out John's incredible comment. Should have just given it the Marshawn Lynch treatment. I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Love it.
King shit. But I guess my only thought to add is I agree that it's like people want the narrative of the sport. It's not just like what happened in the game, but the trials and tribulations, and they want to hear how the athletes feel. And someone who doesn't like sports, I think that's all stuff that I don't care about. So, but I know that people do. But I also wonder if the press conference is, I don't want to say it's completely outdated, but back in the day, these were the only opportunity to hear from athletes. But now if an athlete does want to talk, there's so much on social media, on Instagram, wherever, that these things could happen. do we really need these things? I'm sure the organizations do because they can kind of control the press conference.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about that. I'm also curious, like, it's not like from most of the press conferences I've seen, I never feel like anything really interesting comes out of them. It's usually just like a soundbite or somebody saying, "Oh, I'm really disappointed," or "Oh, that didn't work out for me," or, you know, something like that. So it feels like the purpose of the press conference doesn't help gain any insight. I mean, and maybe other people view it differently, but I've just never seen much value in the press conference.
Yeah.
I think I agree with what Burns was saying, that this was a powerful statement to say that mental health is important, and she has a valid concern that this is horrible. And if anybody's seen these press conferences that have occurred after sporting events, they're terrible. Like, journalists ask the most insane questions, and I don't think
What
I don't
kind
think
of
I
insane
could,
questions as a plebe like myself? Like, why do you suck so bad? Is that what's happening?
sort of, like, I've heard like questions that have been kind of like that, or like, you played so badly today, like, are you concerned that you'll play really badly tomorrow, kind of like.
Are you concerned your career is over and no one will love you ever again?
Sort of, yeah, I've
Ooh.
heard stuff like that, and you don't hear it typically from like well-known publications and outlets, but you do hear it from other journalists, and it's sort of like I don't know if they're doing it on purpose, or if there's like a language barrier, or maybe just a personality or communication style difference, but it almost feels like they're goading the athlete into having a strong reaction, or to get that sound bite, to create that drama off the court, or off the field or pitch or whatever. And I just don't like that. It feels unnecessarily dramatic. Like, you want to create your story and get that athlete to cry or be angry, when we should really just be focusing on how they played. And so maybe if like they could pre-screen questions or something like that, that might be helpful, because some of these press conferences are brutal, and it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that anybody should have to go through, regardless of your profession.
Yeah, I wonder if like part of it is the way in which people aren't as likely to read long form, journalistic pieces on an athlete and the minutia of a certain game anymore. But what does it is, like, if you get like the buzzy phrase, quote, clip, and that's what you put on your social media, and that's what's getting these writers' attention. Like, I know at least in writing about the NBA these days, there's a lot more traction from like one zippy tweet than there is from a well thought out, 1,500 word piece. So I just wonder if that plays into it too, that these reporters, some of whom maybe aren't evil people, are just like, shit, I got to get someone to say something pretty wild so I can get some clicks.
Yeah, I will say, and I think this is less about Naomi Osaka, because I think I'm not going to defend reporters asking shitty questions to athletes, because I think the one, not concern, but like the end result of this logic is, I do want to be on the lookout for, people become public figures, whether through politics or sports or whatever. And with that comes like an extra level of scrutiny. And again, not defending the shitty like questions that people are asking her about, like, why do you suck so bad? But I also think we should be on the lookout, like with other athletes who might use this to basically, I'm just imagining a politician saying something like, hey, did you feel bad when you like passed this law that, cut, millions of people off from food stamps? And then be like, my mental health is really bad. And that's not what Naomi Osaka is doing. But I think the other side of this is basically people in powerful positions. You run the risk of people using mental health as sort of like a get out of jail free card for shitty behavior. Not that Naomi Osaka is doing anything shitty, not that she deserves those questions, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective. I think it's a tough thing, and like people can lie and use excuses for all sorts of things. I had a colleague once who anytime she had like a major project due, or something was happening, or she was behind on her work, suddenly someone in her family would die. And it was like,
whoa, was she cursed? Did a witch curse
that's
her
the
family?
thing. It was like at the end of like the year, people were like, how many grandmothers do you have? Like, do you have any family left? Like, everybody is dying. And so I'm not saying she's lying, but I'm also saying that, like, if this is true, like, how is that possible that, like, someone dies at the most convenient times for you? So I feel like shitty people are going to lie about anything. And if it's mental health or your ninth grandmother dying for the fifth time, like,
some people got a lot of grandmas, extended families, the whole thing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
some people have grandmas that when they were children sipped water from a secret well in North Florida that they didn't know was the fountain of youth, but they only drank some of it, so they have the ability to come back multiple times.
Yeah.
oh, where's the fountain located?
I'm not at liberty to tell. We went on a
It's
field
the
trip there in
fountain
7th grade.
that in Universal Studios that Burns was thrown out of.
Yes. The fountain that I danced in that got me kicked out of Universal Studios for life was in fact the Fountain of Youth. I will.
Is this
never die.
real? You got kicked out of Universal Studios for life?
Wow. Yeah, that's Wisecrack canon.
No way. I thought it was
yeah.
a joke. I've heard you say it before on the podcast. I just assumed you were joking.
No, most of the weirdest stuff I say is not in jest. It's just real, but it sounds like jokes, so I can get away with talking about it. Yeah, but I get what y'all are saying. I just think with all that, it's like people are always gonna lie about shit. So then that's the only thing where like, and I don't think either of y'all are doing this, but I think sometimes there can be this tendency that's like, well, anyone could just lie about mental health. If someone has the flu, I can tell because they're puking or whatever it might be. But then it's like, okay, so we're gonna punish like the 95 people who really have an anxiety disorder because of the 5 assholes who were like, I'm like anxious and I can't do that surgery today, so tell Mr. Williams he'll get it done another liver another day. Because surgeons always do that. Yeah, but I think we're all firmly team Naomi Osaka here. And I'm just, I'll be curious to see if there are changes made, at least in tennis, to how they do this sort of thing. If there's a universe where like they even could do like, I don't know, this is stupid, but if they get like a certain number of passes, or like you only have to do so many media obligations, or, you know, maybe even if it's like if you lose a big match, you can just go home.
Or like maybe change the format. Like maybe a large press conference doesn't work for everyone. So maybe have like different like options for people, like a one-on-one setting or something like a smaller format. I think that could be good. Or maybe just get rid of mandatory media obligations. I think that's a great idea too. Maybe incentivize them instead. If you do a media obligation, you get an extra $5,000, something like that.
Well, I want to do media obligation. That sounds like a fun deal. Well, that's great. Any other thoughts on this one?
Take care of your mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. And know that it's okay and it's good if your mental health is bad. I just always think this. If you would feel comfortable saying, I can't do X activity because I'm fevering or I'm puking or whatever, then you can do that if you're having genuine mental health stuff. But just don't lie because it makes it bad for everyone. And if you have 10 grandmas, don't feel bad about telling people you have to go to her funeral 10 times. Just have the paperwork to back that up is all I would say. Have 10 birth certificates for 10 grandmas. Okay, so I'm in a weird place, everyone. So I want to talk about this article, but since I initially decided to talk about this, and now the paper of record, the New York Times, has retracted the part of the article that really inspired me to talk about it.
That's the story. Let's talk. What's the story? What's the retraction? I need to know everything.
Well, let's hear. We'll start in general. We'll start nice and good, and we'll get into the meaty stuff. So there's an article that came out at the end of last week. It's titled "How to Arrange Your Post-Pandemic Friendscape" by an author named Kate Murphy. I see a good Irish name. I think surely this is going to be a great article. And the genuine gist of the article is thinking through, and I've thought about this, like for many of us over the past year, we haven't seen a lot of our good friends, a lot of friendships I know in my life have fallen by the wayside because there's people that I knew via various social settings. Like I wasn't going to just like, hey, let's FaceTime and talk. And in my mind was just like, when things are better, we'll be friends again. But a lot of us are going through this now. Like, who do we reach back out to? I know I've talked to some friends who were like, ooh, I haven't hung out with Kyle in a year. And I've realized I don't think I like Kyle. And it's like, oh, maybe don't call Kyle again. To be clear, I don't know anyone named Kyle. This is not about you, I promise. So this article is kind of talking through some of this stuff. I'll read a couple parts from it that I think were relatively non-problematic. So early in the article, Murphy says, as pandemic restrictions ease in the United States and we may once again belly up to an all-you-can-eat buffet of social activity, the question is, will we pile our plates and gorge or be more selective and stick to what nourishes and sustains us? Psychologists, sociologists, and evolutionary anthropologists say it behooves us to take a more curatorial approach when it comes to our friends, because who you hang out with determines who you are. So out of curiosity, how does that strike you all? Anything problematic there? Or do we agree that, you know, it's worth being curatorial about our friendships and who we hang out with?
I think I'm in buffet mode. I don't know. Well, not quite yet. Really, I've only hung out with like 2 or 3 vaccinated friends. But it's time. I'm going to go get coffees with people, meet people for drinks. I used to maybe do that once a week. I'm doing every single night. Not yet.
Oh my God.
I mean,
wow.
Aspirationally. I'm not actually doing that. I probably don't have the mental energy to do that. But no, yeah, I don't know. I'm not curatorial is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Survey, are you thinking about this at all as you reapproach the world? Are you thinking of like your social connections and friendships in curation mode? Or is it just like a give me all of the social activity, please, Lord?
So I don't have very many friends. So I already curate, I guess, just because I don't like a lot of people. So I mean, it's not like I have like fringe friends that I wouldn't hang out with. I just don't hang out. Like I literally only have like 5 friends. Not even.
Yeah, and so to be clear for our listeners, this is not Serby saying that she's sad she only has 5 friends. It's her saying she doesn't like a lot of people. Everyone wants to be friends with her. She has chosen these 5. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's the
cool.
truth.
I'm just helping you so you don't get attacked on Twitter with all these simps that are like, Serby, I'll be your friend.
Yeah, I just don't. It's hard for me to open up to people. I'm like very private.
Who wants to open up to people? It sucks. So that's one part of the article. Now, another aspect of it says this. She says, having friends who, and this is talking about like who we should pick as our friends in our inner friend circle.
The rich ones.
She said, the rich. Yeah, find their bank accounts. She says, having friends who encourage, stimulate, and support you is associated with improved immunity. Oh, good. Lower blood pressure and higher cognitive function. Having no friends, toxic friends, or superficial friends not only can make you feel insecure, lonely, or depressed, but can also accelerate cellular aging and increase your risk of premature death. Helps me understand the movie, what was it called? Benjamin Button? I guess he had bad friends, so got old.
He had good friends, and that's why he aged
backwards. Okay, I've never seen that movie. I was just guessing he ages backwards. That's good to know. Okay, it's like the movie Jack, where Robin Williams gets really old, so his friends were shit.
From Toxic Friends, yeah.
From Toxic Friends. That movie's so sad. And then final thing that I found kind of interesting, it says that research shows that only half our friendships are mutual. That is, only half of those who we think are our friends feel the same way about us, which I found horrifying because as someone who's insecure about friendships, sometimes I do think that, like, do I think someone's my friend and they're just like Michael who? But here's the real kicker. When this article first came out, there was a chunk in the section about who we should be friends with that said we should avoid being friends with people who suffer from obesity, depression, who use tobacco or alcohol, who are unhealthy, and was basically like, since we're affected by the friends that we have, only have friends that are totally good, because if you have a depressed friend, you'll be depressed. If you have an overweight friend, you'll get overweight. If your friends drink or smoke, it's going to be bad for you. And I'm just going to read you a couple comments on the New York Times website.
Wait, can I okay, so obesity, drinking, smoking, depression, that's like 100% of Americans are one of those that you'll have.
I don't know. When it was going through the list, I was like, I do not have a friend. I don't have any friend that's like super jacked physically, no mental health issues, doesn't use any substances of any sort, just drinks kale smoothies. Like, I don't know this person, and I don't think I'd want to be friends with them. Do you think the straight edge
kids in high school, I know we kind of made fun of them because they were straight edge, but they're the ones we need to be friends with. They're probably killing it. They're probably not depressed. They probably have like 8 kids by now.
Yeah. Straight edge kids are cool.
How the fuck did this get published? Like, does this not go through like any sort of like fact checking, or did the copy editor not look at this and be like, yikes? Like
Yeah.
there's something
Well,
off.
Lay it on us, Burns.
I'm gonna look at a couple comments and then I'll read you the retraction. I just like these. So if you look, there are a lot of comments on this article. Here's one from BK Billy from Brooklyn, New York. They said, I don't know who this person is. Why stop here? I'm pretty sure I've read literature somewhere that says people who have friends with cancer are more likely to wind up with cancer. Same with AIDS. Those people are surely holding you back too, Miss Murphy. Curate them. And it says, New York Times, what exactly were you thinking printing an article that calls depression, obesity, smoking, and drinking the opposite of kind, studious, and enterprising? Oh, yeah, because it did say that. Do you still have editors? Then Liz, down in Austin, Texas, says, what a tone-deaf, elitist take on the human condition. I can't imagine the level of privilege and lack of insight that would lead someone to suggest cutting out fat and disabled people, as well as those suffering from mental illness. God forbid this author had to deal with all three. What a bummer for them. So that's Liz and BK
preach.
Billy.
Kim from Austin.
Close enough. Liz, 3-letter name.
Liz.
You got it. But so then the New York Times retracted that section and added this. This article has been updated to remove references to studies that examined issues related to friendships and obesity, depression, and tobacco and alcohol use. The article's references to the studies lacked sufficient context and attribution and did not adequately convey their relevance to the issues discussed in the article. But how did that get published?
Well, okay, even when you said the first less shitty thing about good friends, cellular aging, etc.
That can't be real.
I mean, I haven't looked at the research, whatever. Maybe there's like dozens of published peer-reviewed things that's like, yeah, we're in on this. But I know with health journalism in general, it's like one study of 20 people found the like slightest statistical significance for this claim. And I like the New York Times is basically going on like the studies may not have been super robust or accurate, but was any of it? And also like what level of checking are you doing on there? And also, even if it was true, it's just so shitty, but I can talk about that later. I don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it all reminds me too of, and we might have mentioned this on this podcast before, if we haven't, like, do the Googles, but of a lot of this like PMC, professional managerial class discourse about how people are starting to treat every part of their life using like management theory and the way we think about work and employability. And it just like remind me of that. Like, it's sort of like I'm going through my friendship resumes, looking at who has positive qualities and could contribute to my overall brand and bottom line. Like, it's sort of, there's something about the article doesn't mention the word like love. And I think friendship has a lot to do with love and emotional bonds and building others up. And there's even, there's stuff in Plato and Aristotle about the importance of friendship, and friendship being this process by which people relate to each other for positive benefit and good. And none of like the cool old Greek philosophers were like only be friends with the fanciest men and the nicest togas. There was a lot of talk about friendship being this process of like reciprocal growth via loving bonds. And, the reduction of things to like scientific terms, and I think those studies, I think provides like a faux objectivity where someone could say like, well, if it helps your cellular aging, then you're allowed to like abandon a friend who's going through some really serious stuff and not be there for them right now. And of course, this kind of ties into like our last topic. Like, would you, if you're friends with Naomi Osaka, are you just like, sorry, can't be friends with you anymore? You're one of the most talented athletes in the entire world, but you're anxious and that doesn't work for me right now.
I'm very curious about this writer's life. Like, does she not drink, or has she not been depressed? How is her BMI?
I can't imagine. And if Kate Murphy's a real Irish American, she is depressed. She is drinking. She is using one to cope for the other. Yeah. I'm sorry if Kate Murphy's. Actually, I'm not sorry, Kate Murphy. You wrote a thing that was kind of reckless. If you want to come on the podcast, feel free. Yeah.
The studies being bullshit is one thing, but I think I think in its most severe form, I think maybe it gets at the problems with like, I don't want to say all curatorial friendships, but like that ethos is kind of what you were saying, Burns, with the PMC culture. It's kind of celebrating, endorsing, promoting kind of the like commodification or neoliberalization of like friendship, right? There's a lot to say about friendship and community, and sometimes your friends are dragging you down, but like there's ethics of care rather than like ethics of like gain, right? Like your friend is not always going to be helping you out, etc. It could be about mutual growth, but like sometimes your friends is in a shitty place and they need that. Sometimes with your friends with a person with like real shitty opinions, and like, do you cut them out of your life, or do you try to like, you know, help them through that? And I think, you know, we're stuck in this mentality where, you know, it's a commodity which has to do like a service for me. And the same thing with love and dating and relationships.
Yeah. I mean, and I think with friendships too, like having friends who maybe don't have the same issues as us or have had positive growth can be really beneficial. Like I know, like I have a friend, I'll say his name's Dan Olson. Look him up. Good writer, has a website with some stuff on it. But he's someone
not the YouTuber though, right?
No, he's not a YouTuber. He is not on the, it's probably a common name. Maybe don't Google Dan Olson because you might find some psychopath and be like, wow, Burns has some sus friends. But he's the sort of person who like, if I can think in a scenario, like what would Dan do? And it's normally something good and healthy. And he's someone who's a good dad and a good partner and stuff like that. And it would be horrible if back in the day when I first became friends with Dan, he was like, oh, Michael's kind of a mess, not worth my time. But because he's a good person, he would never think like that. And I think that's what like good friendships and good relationships often involve, like that balance between high and low where we're there for people and they're there for us. You know, I would say that one of the few things in the article that I did just like was a line that said, where she stepped back and said, but in all of this, of course, it's not just evaluating others. We can even think about like, are we being good friends? Are we acting the way that we want to? And I think that's like a cool thing to think about. I think maybe some of us, I don't know if y'all have had this scenario, but in a couple of my first hangouts post-vaccine, I've been with people who at various points have talked too much and maybe talked too much about themselves. And then came to that realization and in the same setting was like, sorry, guys, I've been talking a lot. I haven't talked to anyone but my partner and my dog in a year. But yeah, I think we can all actively think about, are we being good friends? But yeah, if you cut someone out of your life because of these reasons, I think you're just objectively an asshole.
Yeah.
I think diversity of thought is important, which is what you touched on earlier. And like the other thing is I have a friend who is very kind, and like 80% of the time she and I get along so well, but there's 20% of the time where she'll just, you know, our personalities are not aligned perfectly. But it's not like I'm like, you know, your depression is really ramping up right now, so I'm just gotta cut you out because that 20% is really bringing me down. I feel like there's 20% of the time when I'm not doing well, but she takes the time to listen to me. Or it's those experiences that make her empathetic. You know, she's dealt with certain things. Her life has been so different from mine, and that's what makes her such an empathetic, kind friend. And the idea of cutting her out because she has depression or anxiety or whatever, I just can't imagine. It just seems so strange. I do think that it's good to cut out people who are incredibly toxic and make you feel bad about yourself. But if they're a little obese or they smoke cigarettes, like, that's just strange. I find it very, very strange. And now I want to go on like a deep dive into this writer's life and be like, tell me about everything. You should explain yourself.
For you, Murphy. We're coming for you. Yeah, I do think with the smoking thing, though, I don't want to be friends with anyone who smokes inside in 2021. Sorry. I have no problem if you go outside and smoke. If you're an indoor smoker, I want nothing to do with you. It's disgusting. But I agree with everything you're saying there, Survey. I think, like, you know, I have two really close male friends. We're a tight little unit. And I think in the past couple of years, we've been more open with each other about like mental health stuff and feelings. And our friendships have like grown a lot. I think we've grown a lot in being that like, oh, it's okay. We can admit this stuff rather than hiding it. Cause you know, men are often taught to like bury it down. And I think since we've been more open, it's actually made our friendship stronger. So Kate Murphy doesn't know what she's talking about. I'd love to talk to her friends. Imagine reading that article if you're like Kate Murphy's friend and you like put on a little pandemic weight, or like, you know, you like to have a beer every now and then and you're just like, oh shit, I haven't heard from her in a while.
This explains everything.
You're out of the circle.
Yeah. So speaking of online outrage and people changing things, like the New York Times changed this article, Alec, I guess there's some news or something going on where people and authors are changing their actual books because people on social media are mad about it. Is this real?
Yeah, and I want to the context of the story. I think you'll probably hear different versions of it depending on people's political leanings, but it seems from what I can tell is like a very small number of people with very dumb opinions are causing authors to send out apologies, change lines in their book on further publication, etc. So there's an article in Slate by Laura Miller. The headline is "Bogus Social Media Outrage is Making Authors Change Lines in Their Books Now." Here is the paragraph from that. As described in an article in Publishers Week, wrong line. Ellen Hilderberg writes novels about people who summer in Nantucket and have lots of family secrets and complicated love lives. The books, whose covers feature beach scenes with women in sun hats and sherbet-colored towels fluttering in the sea breeze, reliably make the best seller list every July. As described in an article in Publishers Weekly, readers on Instagram criticized Hildebrandt's summer 2021 book, The Golden Girl, for a passage in which two teens, Vivi and Savannah, discuss plans for Vivi to hide out in the attic of Savannah's house without Savannah's parents' knowledge. Quote, "You're suggesting I hide here all summer?" Vivi asked. Like Anne Frank. The two friends laugh at this, but Vivi thinks to herself, is it really funny? And is Vivi so far off base? So, I don't know. Do I think that's a funny joke? Not necessarily. Whatever, don't care. On an Instagram post in Hildebrandt's publisher's feed, a user posted a comment denouncing this joke as horrifically anti-Semitic and demanding an apology. Others described themselves as disgusted and gobsmacked in every way with the insensitivity and accused Hildebrandt of thinking anti-Semitism is funny. After trying to put out these fires via DMs, Hildebrandt issued a formal apology and said that the line would be removed from the book. And this isn't the only time this month an author came under fire for something one of their fictional characters said. A few days later, a Twitter user posted a passage from Casey McQuiston's Red, White, and Royal Blue, a popular gay romance novel in which a supporting character who's the president of the United States complains, quote, "Well, my UN ambassador fucked up his one job and said something idiotic about Israel. Now I have to call Netanyahu and personally apologize." This one user insists this, quote, "normalizes the genocide and war crimes done by Israel that always be backed up and unashamedly supported by America." Of course, in that case, it does not seem like that's a tacit endorsement of Israel. If anything, it might be a parody of presidents kowtowing to the wishes of the Israeli prime minister. I don't know. But I think there is this sort of idea among a very small group of people that characters in literature need to be not the author has to have the right ideas, but characters need to be unproblematic, need to have the right idea to say the wrong things, and there's not room for bad characters, parodies of characters. I mean, we get this is basically when people complain about the movie American Psycho, how could you worship Patrick Bateman? It's no, this is a parody. Just because you make a character doesn't mean you're supporting them. I don't know. What do you all think?
Not everyone has to be good. We're at this cultural moment where everyone has to be good. Our celebrities all have to be good, and they have to have really good political opinions, and they can't be wrong. They can't just be actors or musicians. They have to be good. Every athlete has to be good. And now we're at this point where fictional characters have to be good. And we just want books and movies where a bunch of good people are good to each other. Basically, we want books written by New York Times author Kate Murphy, where she outlines friends who are just good friends that have no problems and never say anything wrong. And with those two examples, and this is knowing nothing of the context of the books, two teen or adolescent children probably read The Diary of Anne Frank in school and might say a comment like that and might not understand why that could be insensitive, but it's completely, I could imagine that happening. And the other example you give, that is something a president would say, and that could be said in parody, kind of criticizing the geopolitical situation of the country. I think it's silly, but the worst part about this is I hate that they're I just hate that they're apologizing. You just give these people power when you do that. I don't know.
Yeah. There was some talk on Twitter where, Taylor Renz was tweeting about it and basically asking the question, is it only these are female authors sort of bending to pressure, are sort of men immune from the same pressure or not subjected to the same way, which I think is also an interesting question. Sorry, Serby.
I think that this cleanse that we're doing is so strange because one of the great things about literature is that it forces you to examine yourself and to examine what you think is right and wrong. And maybe making that Anne Frank joke or that Anne Frank comment, that's a part of that character's development, and it's a part of that who that character is. It gives insight into that character. So why would we want to read stories with characters who are all the same, who don't drink, who are not obese, who don't like smoke like friggin' Murphy wants us to? It seems so strange Murphy. That like, what's the point of entertainment, and if everything's going to be the same? And I don't read stuff because I want to have my thoughts reflected back at me. I want to read a good story, and if it happens to have a character who's anti-Semitic, maybe it's a good story and it helps me like develop a new perspective, or reinforce my own beliefs or something. So it's weird. It's like a weird it's just like a weird data cleanse that we're doing.
Yeah, I do want to clarify something I said earlier, only because a thing happens sometimes now where something you get pulled from this podcast and put into a YouTube video with 4 million views where I get called an idiot. But when I said that we want everyone to be good, I just wanted to be noted as well. If like a comedian or an actor says like Nazi stuff, it's totally okay to not like that person and think they're a piece of shit.
Mel Gibson.
You're talking about fictional characters.
Yes. I basically what I was trying to say before is that we're taking this like moral purity we might desire in others, or morality in others, and applying it to fictional characters, which doesn't make as much sense. So just to be clear, because I don't want to get canceled. My mom watches YouTube obsessively and I don't want her to cry anymore. She doesn't know how to go on YouTube.
Dude abides asking in the comment, can you imagine if American Psycho was released today? And to be honest, I think it would be like, I think when it came out originally, there was pushback to the movie saying it was, misogynist, all these things. But there was a segment of people being like, no, it's not. It's like a critique of these things. And I think people are like, oh, this could never come out today. Like, of course it could. I mean, most things. Like, it is a smart, insightful movie that's making fun of yuppie culture, misogyny, etc. There would be this group of people being like, oh, Patrick Bateman's a bad man. We should never write about bad people. But I don't know. I mean, maybe studios would be more reticent. I don't know. But, the culture wars in the 90s were still a thing. And, I don't know. Did it come out in the 2000s?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Point is like people were not completely unaware of cultural controversy in that way. And there have been some authors, and I wish I remember the name, but like this idea that literature needs to be like didactic and sort of teaching people a lesson in like a very, very specific way is just, the example they use is American Psycho, and also, Lolita, which in my mind, again, is not a celebration of a pedophile, but kind of about how a person uses the sort of flowery language and like the idea of like civilization and culture to be like an absolute fucking perv. But
yeah, I think
those nuances get lost.
And the weird line with this stuff too is like American Psycho, we can look back and be like, well, here's why it's not problematic, because it is a critique of these things. And then you look back at a movie, which I've laughed at many times in my life, like Wedding Crashers, and you're like, oh, this aged poorly because the good guys in the movie we're rooting for are doing date rapes. And we're meant to believe.
Totally
so,
different situation.
So it's like sort of like there's some movies we look back on, and sadly often it is a lot of comedies that have a lot of like racist and misogynist stuff strewn throughout them, where we can be like, oh, society has progressed, so we can be like, these characters are not good. And in the film we can see that the filmmakers are trying to be like, these are cool guys. Yeah. Whereas in American Psycho, the film, they're not trying to be like, this guy rips, you should be like Patrick Bateman, even though some psychopaths took that message away from it. That's not the fault of the artist there.
Yeah, totally.
This is just an aside, but I hate that book. I hate it so much. And when Jared and I were doing the Thug Notes episode for it, it was so hard for me. And I remember I just kept saying over and over, I was like, I hate this so much. And he's like, well,
American Psycho?
Yeah. And he's like, well, let's just write that in there. And I was like, excellent, because I hate it so much.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, when I had to read some passages for it for the recent Wisecrack book versus film on youtube.com/Wisecrack, it was gnarly to read some of those passages and get back in that book. And it's not for me. I am never going to read that full book.
It's just so
and I'm
boring.
fine with that. But I was convinced by our own video. I was like, okay, I get what it's going for. I see how like that these are the ideas that he had, but not for me. I'm just going to read books about like Nantucket in the summer and salmon covered towels. That sounded lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where was that article if people wanted to check it out, Alec? You probably
So
said
that's
it,
on Slate, and it's by Laura Miller, and you just Google the headline: "Bogus social media outrage is making authors change lines in their books now." It's a cool article. Gets into a little bit about sort of the culture of Twitter, and these are adult books, but young adult fiction and all that stuff.
Cool. And this week's hashtag Culture Binge Challenge is let's all pick a famous author and cyberbully them into changing a major plot point of a book. So let's see if the Herman Melville estate.
I didn't like in Fight Club when they punched each other.
Yeah. So
I don't
take
endorse
out the
violence.
punches. Yes.
Violence is bad.
My sons, Brayden and Tristan, will not stop beating each other up in the basement near the laundry room. And it's because of Fight Club. So save my boys, change it, and make it a club about like foosball and not fighting. Foosball club.
Yeah.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, foosball club.
So before we head out today, if anyone has thoughts about anything we've talked about, especially Kate Murphy, if you hear this, Murphy, get in touch. We need to work this out. Okay. One proud Irish American to another. We'll make it work. But get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. So you can email us at culturebinge@wisecrack.co. No M. culturebinge@wisecrack.co, or call us at 213-534-8807. That is 213-534-8807. Do we have anything this week, Alec? Our postman. He's like, you're like the postman character from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but on this. Oh. What is his name again?
Does he say any bad things? I don't want to be associated.
No, he's super cool.
Okay, yeah.
No one says anything bad on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
He was
except
like
that episode where Mr. Rogers was like, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh boy. No, the postman character was cool because he was this he was a gay black guy in an era where like, not a lot of representation for black people or gay people on TV. And there's a little feature on him in the documentary they made about it. And one of the only failings of Mr. Rogers was his some initial inability to come to terms with the fact that someone could be like gay and super chill and great, because he was still a little bit conservative in his beliefs, but then he grew later in life.
That's what you love to hear.
Yeah. So back to the mailbag.
Yeah. So no voicemails today, but we got a couple emails. The first one, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Sorry if I'm not. Shavrock says, "Hi Wisecrack. You guys talked about NFTs last episode. I just stumbled on this video which describes a scam that is sort of an NFT called Earth 2. It's a game, but the main idea is that they've split up the Earth into grids and each tile is for sale. They also send some videos and sites, but we don't need to get into that. But yeah, basically you could like go on Google Earth and buy like an NFT of your house or something. I checked it out and it's horrifying and I hate it."
That's cool. I want to do that. I want to buy Kate Murphy's house and then show up and be like, "Get out, Kate."
I also think it's funny, because in God, what's the cyberpunk novel? Not Snowpiercer, Snow Crash. There's like the metaverse, like they coined that term, but it's like this sort of cool internet, like it's a secondary world. It's basically like Second Life, and it's this cool space where hackers can exist, but basically NFTs are just trying to do that. But it's like pay $1 million for a picture of this house. Next email is from Daniel, also about NFTs. I notice when you guys keep coming back to NFTs, you seem to be representing them as simply an electronic deed, which is only half the story. Sure, they're secure, non-forgeable, and censorship-proof, some of the core value propositions of blockchain technology, but the specific technology of the NFT is the smart contract. In their most simple form, smart contracts allow for trustless transactions. I don't trust anyone, I love that. Without third parties, that is to say, they cut out middlemen for things such as escrow. However, that is just the start. You can program a smart contract to do different things that you would want in the process of the transaction. This is where it gets exciting for creators. Right now, all NFTs minted on OpenSea or Rarible automatically have a 10% perpetual royalty built in. The creator automatically receives a royalty anytime their asset is sold on in the future. Historically, royalties would have to be managed by third parties who skim their bit off the top. Now they're automatically credited. If you sell your 3D hologram of Pepe the Frog flipping a burger for $15,000 and then the next guy sells it for $60,000, you get a nice little kickback of $6,000 of that transaction. Although much of the NFT boom in the art world is dumb as fuck, I totally agree there. It's simply a new technology exploring a simple use case with broad appeal. Apply this idea of smart contracts to houses, which have so many third-party related fees attached, and you suddenly make meaningful improvements. Or what if you build a house and eventually sell it? Why should royalties be the exclusive territory of people who sell songs to movie soundtracks? Which, I don't know, do house builders need royalties? So thank you for the email. I think it's a cool idea, especially in art, but I don't think a house builder.
Maybe
I
like
don't
an
think they need
architect or
royalties.
something. Well, I just want to thank Daniel for the email because I like that he's being gracious with us. And I think he understands that none of us are programmers. And I think our collective knowledge of certain tech platforms is very limited. So thank you for, cluing us into some of the stuff that we have missed in our, not service level, but like shallow level discussions of NFT technology.
That email just blew my mind. Thank you so much for sending that in. I didn't think about applying it to other use cases.
Yeah. The more I learn about this blockchain stuff, there might be something there, guys. There might be something there.
Well,
you heard it here first.
Well, with blockchain, I think there's always cool stuff, but 99% of it is bullshit. And I think there needs to be, I'm not saying it'll never amount to anything, but I think, with the development of anything, even like the internet, you kind of have to let the bubble burst. And then the things that are actually worthwhile might stick around. Like Bitcoin as a currency is basically worthless. Like no one's going to use regularly a thing that's going to be worth half as much like one day to the next. But smart contracts, Daniel also mentioned in the email that like Ethereum is going to proof of stake, which is not as energy intensive. I think that's all cool. I'm not permanently writing off, but currently most NFTs and crypto is dumb as fuck. I'm not saying you shouldn't invest in it.
Wow.
I'm just saying it's dumb as fuck.
Wow. Well, you heard it there too, folks. Any other emails today?
That's it. That's all we got.
Awesome. Well, give us some more. Get in touch with us. Once again, it's culturebinge@wisecrack.co, 213-534-8807. Love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for the emails and voicemails that we don't read and play. We still like them. We listen to them, read them. We love them, except for when they're mean, but they're never mean, so it's fine. Now, if you don't want to email or call and you just want to hit us up on social media, Serby, where can people find you on the totally safe and not weird and creepy internet?
You can tweet me, SuriPatel22.
Fantastic. Do it and be nice. Alec, where can someone retweet some of your great takes? I feel like you've been on a good tear recently, so how can they encourage this tear you're on?
I'm at Wisecrack Alec, but don't friend me if you're depressed or drink. So I'm trying to curate.
I'm going to go unfollow Alec. And if you want to hit me up, it's at Michael O. Burns. Straightforward on Twitter. On Instagram, there's little underscores separating the middle initial from the rest of the name. That was way too complicated, but I said it. So we will be back, barring global catastrophe, in a couple weeks. So we will see you all then. Can't wait for it. Make sure to subscribe to The Squanch if you're a Rick and Morty person and want to see what we have going on there. And in the meantime, we hope that your next 2 weeks are all slaps, no chaps.